Hot flashes, hormones, and HIV. Yep, we're going there.
My voice is powerful, and the voices of other women are powerful. Our voices could literally change the world.
Ask your healthcare provider if Biktarvy is right for you, and visit Biktarvy.com to view the important facts, including important warnings.
Hello there, welcome to Plus Talk on Plus Life, where we're all about turning positive into a plus. We are talking menopause and HIV today, and my guest is Bridgette Picou from the Well Project. Good to see you, Bridgette.
It's such a pleasure to see you again. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for doing this. It's a really important topic, so let's just get right into it, shall we? Let's be honest. Menopause isn't exactly a dinner table conversation, but then again, neither is HIV. Why should we be talking about them together today? Why is this an important conversation to have?
There is never enough discussion about the issues that women face as they live and age with HIV, and menopause is a big, big reality of that. It's a huge transition for us. And so the more we can talk about it and kind of normalize it, the better off we are.
So for women living with HIV, how does menopause show up differently? Are the hot flashes hotter, or is there that it's harder to get answers about it? Walk me through it.
You actually have hit the nail on the head. It's both of those things, right? So the symptoms of menopause are thought to be more intense in women living with HIV. They are thought to have an earlier onset, and there is absolutely not enough information, right? So for the majority of women, we tend to use our ID clinician as our primary physician as well, right? Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, a lot of ID clinicians don't have any idea about what's going on with menopause. And then the flip side of that is if I go to see a GYN, they may know nothing about HIV. And so it puts us in this weird spinning cycle, and it gets very frustrating. And so I think in addition to just talking about it so that women know what's happening, it's important for clinicians to start thinking about those things too.
Yeah, and there is a myth, I guess, that menopause is the end of sexuality for women. How does that stereotype in itself hurt women, especially those living with HIV? Because a lot of people say an HIV diagnosis is the end of sexuality too.
I always say this, and people laugh, but it is absolutely the truth. My hormones did not stop hormoning because I got HIV, right? And I acquired HIV at 40, which is, for a lot of women, that space where you get this little ramp up of hormones. And I can say that I was one of those women. And so it is, life goes on behind an HIV diagnosis, right? Like we had a whole life before we got the diagnosis. We continue to have a whole life after it. And so for me, I'm a nurse. So as a woman living with HIV and as a nurse and as an advocate, I know that sex and that sexual connection is really important. I also know that things change after you hit a certain age because I'm at that certain age. And so conversations like these are important because women need to understand that A, there is a healthy sex life after an HIV diagnosis, and B, even though you start to transition into aging and things like menopause, there are still ways to have an enjoyable, healthy sex life. And that matters. We need that. We need that. It's not just the physical connection and the emotion of it. It's also good for your mental health. It's good for your body. It's good physically and emotionally. And we need that in our lives.
Well, and it feels good too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And to your point, with everything going on in the world, at least we should be able to have sex that feels good and enjoy it, right?
Exactly.
There is obviously a lot of stigma around HIV, but there is a lot of stigma, it seems, or even shame around menopause. What happens when those two collide?
They tend to exacerbate each other, right? There is the stigma of aging, period, for women is that we lose our sexual attractiveness. We lose our vitality. We're competing, with younger women, which a lot of women my age, we absolutely are not doing that. But that's one of the myths, right? And then you add to that the stigma and bias that people face living with HIV. So things like U equals U are important. Right? Like it's important for people to know that if you are undetectable, you cannot transmit your virus to someone else. But U equals U also means that we tend to be healthier, right? Like our body is functioning at optimal, whatever. So it's really important that as we consider the whole person, and it's particularly the whole woman, um, and look at it through a feminine lens, that we have to be versed a little bit on everything that's happening to us when it comes to aging. So there's comorbidities to consider. Menopause is not typically considered a comorbidity, but it starts to feel like the burden of a comorbidity if you don't have all of the answers that you need in order to be able to navigate it successfully.
Yeah, and you touched on this a minute ago, but how do you feel about healthcare providers? Are they really equipped to talk about menopause and HIV at the same time? Or are women, and I think you've kind of alluded to this, are sort of being left on their own to figure it out? And how do we bridge those gaps so that your healthcare providers are equipped to talk about these two things in alignment?
Yeah, so there are those golden unicorn providers that are very well versed in both of these things. And I think as many of us living with HIV start to learn, we have to advocate for ourselves in so many different ways. And that's no different when it comes to menopause and HIV. We have to be able to walk into an office and advocate for what we need. Now, how do we know what we need? Well, we have conversations like these, we do our research. And I believe that even if a woman is not a public advocate, right? Never out about her status, doesn't talk about her HIV status. Every time you walk into a doctor's office and you present something, you're not only advocating for yourself, but you're advocating for the women that come behind you. And so when you walk into a doctor's office and you have a list of questions about menopause, even if that particular clinician doesn't know, that's their opportunity to go and find out so that they can provide you with answers. But it also puts in their head, hey, this may happen again, so let me make a note of it. And so that's where self-advocacy comes into play, and standing up for ourselves. And I'm one of those people that when I got diagnosed, I wanted to know everything that I possibly could about the virus, right? Like it was my
Me
coping
too.
mechanism. Yeah, but
Yeah,
some
same.
people just want to take their medication and keep going, right?
Hmm.
So in those cases, it's important that we have conversations amongst each other. You talk to your mom, your aunt, and that's how women tend to get through menopause. And it's also, as I'm talking about that, important to note that not every woman will present with menopause the same. I didn't recognize that I was in menopause for a long time because I didn't have the classic hot flashes, which is the hallmark symptom. But I had everything else. I had the joint pain. I had the increase in my anxiety and my depression. I had the brain fog, which is still killing me. The difficulty finding words that I already know. It's more than just walking into a room and not remembering why you walked into a room. There are definite mental and physiological things that happen as a woman processes through menopause, not just the loss of periods, right? There's so much more than that. And so for women in general, but particularly women living with HIV, and if you've been living with HIV for a long period of time, because we know that accelerates aging just a little bit, no matter how good the medications are, do what you can to educate yourself. Find some information, find someone to talk to, and then talk about it persistently over and over and over again until you get what you need.
Yeah, and I like that you said when you go into your healthcare provider and you've got that list. And sometimes it can be helpful to actually write that list down because, I think it can be a little intimidating sometimes when we, the patient, sits there in front of the quote unquote medical professional. And you might go in thinking, I must talk about this. And then you kind of get in there and you freeze. It's not such a silly idea that if you've got things you want to know or talk about, to jot them down, is it?
Yeah, not just that, but a lot of places now have your medical my chart, right? The place where you can
Yes.
go in and see your records. Most of those also have a space where you can send a note. So in advance of your appointment, whenever you're thinking about it, send in a little note. Hey, the next time I come in, I want to talk about XYZ. So then the clinician has that information well in advance, and maybe they've had time to do some research before you come in so that they can give you some of the answers that you need. Any and all of the tools that help you be your own best advocate, I'm a fan of.
Now, you mentioned, obviously, you're a nurse. So can we talk meds for a second? Because I'm curious about how menopause may or may not affect HIV treatment or vice versa. You know, are hormones and hot flashes and HIV, are they all playing nice together?
So current thinking is that yes, they do play nice together. And that's actually important that you mentioned that, because there was a time when folks didn't want to prescribe HRT, which is the hormone replacement therapy. They call it something different right now. I can't remember what it is offhand. That's the menopause. But it's important to note that current thinking is once you know you're in menopause, the earlier you can start hormone replacement therapy, the better you are in the long run, for the life of the menopause, right? So just like we used to wait until you hit 200, CD4 cells before
Mhm.
starting medication, that's all changed. The sooner
Are
you
we talking HIV specific or any woman in
We're
particular?
talking any woman,
Mhm.
but particularly women living with HIV. There's an
Got it.
added benefit to starting HRT sooner, as soon as you know when you're living with HIV.
So, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's the most important thing is to be able to have the conversations. And if you're not getting the answer that you need from the clinician that you're seeing, it's okay to find another one.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of doctor hopping, but I am a fan of if this relationship is not therapeutic and it's not working, fire them and find someplace else to go. We deserve that.
Yeah, you mentioned the hormone treatment there. If someone is watching this who is living with HIV, a female, and they're starting to notice changes in their bodies, what's your message to them? What is the first step, would you say?
The first step is to have a conversation with your clinician. Everything starts there. And if you are a woman, you're already familiar with being brushed off, right? With being ignored. Women's issues tend to be thought of as being, oh, you're being hysteric or you're being dramatic, or it's not. No, you have to really be persistent. And so, my best advice is to be persistent, to be thorough, and to not take no for an answer, right? There are absolutely time and spaces where there may be conditions where hormone replacement therapy may not be right for you, depending on what other comorbidities or issues you have going on. But it's important to have the conversation so that you can find that out. It's important to, if you're not satisfied with the answer, to do a little bit of research and maybe get a second opinion. Unfortunately, what a lot of us have to do is combine the information from two sources. So from your regular infectious disease clinician, and then also from your GYN, and or maybe get the two of them together, via email or text or what have you, so that you can come up with a plan that works directly for you. We are not a monolith and we're not all the same. We all have different kinds of things and issues that are happening within our bodies. And so the more that we can have those conversations and have our clinicians have conversations with other clinicians, the better off we all are in the long run.
Yeah, well, this has been a fascinating conversation. Bridgette Picou from the Well Project, which, by the way, is just a fantastic resource for women living with HIV. If you don't know about the Well Project, check out their website. We'll put the URL up on the screen as well. Fantastic, fantastic support and network for specifically women living with HIV. Bridgette, thanks for having this chat with me. It's been great seeing you again.
I appreciate you and your enthusiasm and all that you do. You cover so many topics and areas for folks living with HIV, and I just want you to know that it is not unnoticed, and we appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. And if you want to notice those other topics that we talk about, you should like, follow, and share. We are at Plus Life Media across all your favorite social platforms, and our website is pluslifemedia.com. If you want to see this interview in its entirety, head over to our YouTube page, Plus Life Official. It'll all be there. Until next time, be nice to one another. Remember, wash your hands every now and then too. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.